What's up, guys? It's Crayfish Obsession here, back with another video, and today we're going to be giving you a buyer's guide to crayfish. Now, you're going to want to sit back and relax. There's going to be a lot of information I want to put into this video, into one video. If you guys prefer like shorter videos with less information and kind of put into a playlist, put that in the comments. I'm really experimenting right now, and I really need your guys' opinions. Alright, so I think this buyer guide is really necessary. Right now, there's not a lot of information going around on crayfish. People are literally selling by the nicknames they give them. So I think you guys really need to do your research to make sure you're not getting swindled or you're not buying something you did not intend to buy. Okay, so we're going to split this video up into species to monetary value, specifications of the species that translates into monetary value, and finally we're going to touch on B grade. And if you guys are kind of confused, I'm going to be going over through online fish stores only. I think local fish stores just don't carry crayfish as a real hobby. They kind of like, maybe they might have the blue crayfish, Procambrus alini. They almost always carry those. Those are really cheap. Maybe tangerine crayfish, but they don't really keep them consistently. Throughout my experience, crayfish are kind of a secondary item when it comes to the average fish aquarist. And that is exactly why I feel like we need a buyer's guide out there. So we are going to start first with blue crayfish. Alright, so when it comes to the cheaper tier of crayfish, it's mostly going to be Procambrus clarkii and Procambrus alini. So let's start with Procambrus alini, probably the most common pet crayfish carried in crayfish stores. The electric blue crayfish. I like to call it the frosty blue. It looks frosty. Oh, it has white bumps over its blue. That's the best way. They look a lot like Procambrus clarkii, but make sure you know that they are not Procambrus clarkii. Blue Procambrus clarkii are a lot more valuable. Then we get the Procambrus clarkii pure color morphs, so like white specter crayfish, like snow white crayfish. These are white Procambrus clarkii, and white crayfish can also come in the Procambrus alini, though it's a bit more rare. And also the tangerine crayfish, orange crayfish, neon red crayfish. These are color morphs of the Procambrus clarkii. I think these would be the cheapest and most common kind of crayfish you'll see being carried by a pet store. Petco loves carrying electric blue crayfish. People love them. They see blue and they think it's super rare. Procambrus alini is not rare at all. You could breed them yourself. So those are kind of the low tiers. Just make sure you're not paying too much for them. I would not recommend buying them online. You can really pick them up at a local fish store at this point. Alright, so now more expensive, more exotics are almost always going to be cherax. There's one crayfish that is American and is super rare to come by, and it's called the painted devil crayfish. And a lot of people think, oh, I've seen the devil crayfish. Well, one, devil crayfish are already hard enough to come by. They dig burrows down a couple of meters down. You really need a shovel and a lot of time, and you might not even dig one up. The tunnel might be abandoned. And even if you do get a devil crayfish, it might not be the painted devil colored morph. But I think these guys look really cool. A lot of people like them. They don't grow as big as a lot of the other crayfish, but a lot of people like them, but it's just too much sweat and grit to kind of collect them. And after the painted devil, I think it's all cherax. There's zebra crayfish or white tiger lobsters, cherax pecni, yellow stripe on their face, easy to identify. Then there's like cherax snowden, really new species. They're kind of black and they have orange tips. Then you kind of get into like more sought after crayfish, and I think like the second most sought after would be like a cherax bosemani. These guys are like dark blue, solid blue, probably the pinnacle of a blue crayfish. And these guys are really cool. They're really big and they're really expensive. And then probably the most sought after crayfish that you're able to buy and has somewhat consistent stock would be the cherax pulcher. Pretty new discovered too. They're kind of pink, rainbow. I'll actually be unboxing one soon once I get back from vacation. But yeah, so those the Cherex poultry will run you a lot of money. I recommend you get them during sales. But yeah, that's just my recommendation. Unless you really want one, I think like you really shouldn't be paying that much for a crayfish. So the next thing we're going to kind of get into is species specifications and what kind of makes a crayfish more valuable. And I think this is like kind of really hard to kind of explain. So as with almost all invertebrates, females are more valuable than males. And it's not going to be like tarantula differences where it's going to be like insanely expensive. A female will probably cost you $10 or $20 more than a male. But if you do see one at a local pet store, they usually don't distinguish female or male. So if you are at a local pet store, a good buying strategy is to buy female because those are usually worth more. But there's a catch. Males, when it comes to the colorful high tier crayfish, males have better coloration. Males are going to be more brightly colored. They're going to have just better coloration than females, and that's something to take into account. A female is not going to be better in every single way. And also, males usually have bigger claws in proportion to their body. Some people like that, some people don't. I personally do. I find it like one of the key things that make them feel like a crayfish and not a lobster or a shrimp. Those big claws. But that's just personal preference. That's just something you guys really have to choose for yourself. Do you want to buy a more valuable female or a more brightly colored male when it comes to the high tier? And this is an important decision because expensive crayfish are going to be expensive. And I don't think you guys want to buy, you guys don't want to do trial and error with this stuff. You guys want to know what you buy and buy it and make sure you get the right thing. Also, an important note is Cherex SP. That means Cherex species. So if you see that in an online pet store or something like that, it just means that the dealer is too lazy to do some research to identify the crayfish. I recommend kind of not buying from them. I wouldn't say don't buy it, but like if you can't really identify it in the photograph, then I wouldn't recommend it. You don't know what species you're gonna get, and there's really big differences. And you might even get a species that's not even discovered yet. You don't even know the value. You don't even know like how much you should be paying for it, and you just don't know anything about it, and you don't even know if there's any special specifications. And I feel like, personally, if there's one thing I don't like about the aquarium trade is when people sell animals that haven't been scientifically analyzed. And I think that's a huge issue because I understand that crayfish are all similar, but I feel like a scientist or a team of scientists really needs to understand it, or at the very least give it a scientific name. I feel like you shouldn't be selling crayfish if it doesn't have a scientific name. I feel like you just hold back and wait until scientists have analyzed and fully understood this crayfish, or at least somewhat understood it, and that way its specifications and needs. So last thing we're going to try to touch on is B-grade crayfish. Now this is really important, kind of controversial too, is that I think a lot of people understand B-grade shrimp. B-grade shrimp are just going to be like less coloration and they're not really going to change. Well, with crayfish change a lot. So I'm going to touch on coloration right now. Coloration in crayfish can change, especially for those self-cloning. So those self-cloning marbled crayfish or marmor krebs, those guys, I've heard that they kind of transition through blue and it kind of just cycles throughout their life. They sometimes become blue and then sometimes become tan. There's not really anything you can do about it. And some crayfish, or most of them actually, will lose color if your water quality gets bad. I know for a fact that red claw crayfish become green when your water gets murky. Most of the dwarf crayfish and the blue pearls will start to lose color after their molts if your pH is too high, and generally bad water quality will lower the quality of your crayfish color. So you want to make that a note. So when it comes to B grade crayfish, coloration B grade wise, you're kind of taking a risk here. You will either be receiving a coloration fail on a crayfish that has just been born that way and will never become the true colors that it could be, or you'll get a crayfish that has the potential to show those colors but haven't been put in the correct water quality and the correct environments to let that color show. So you're kind of taking a risk, but B grade are a lot cheaper. When you buy high tier, I think a lot of people like to buy B grade.
Everything that
and also another thing about B grade is the limbs. Crustaceans, they all grow back their limbs, I'm pretty sure.
I'll be
Crayfish do for a fact.
making a do-it-yourself
But when it comes to B grade, I think missing legs is okay.
And
I think missing legs, if there's a B grade crayfish and someone's labeling and it's missing a leg,
so those are two
I'd take
videos
it
I want to
any day,
make.
because B grade is
Hopefully
always
I'll make
cheaper.
them.
And missing a leg,
yeah,
no
so
one will
this
really
has been
notice.
the update.
But missing a claw,
this is
then it
Crayfish
kind of gets
Obsession here, and I'll see you
interesting. When it comes to missing a
is he
claw,
gonna eat it?
the
Is he
older
gonna
the
eat the
crayfish
cucumber?
is, the less likelihood
Why
the
don't you wanna eat your
claw
vegetables?
will grow back to its original size. If you got an old male, his claws are
Dang,
huge,
he's
and he
just
loses a
refusing
claw,
to eat
it's
his Brussels
probably never
sprouts.
going to go to its full
Alright,
potential.
well, this
But
is
if you have
Crayfish
a young
Obsession
one,
here, and I'm
young
signing
adult,
out. See you in the next
juvenile,
one.
maybe like 3 inches, like 30%, 40%, 50% of its way to full grown, that claw will grow back and you won't even notice the difference. A lot of people kind of like shun B grade crayfish, and they're just like, oh, it only has one claw, it's never gonna be great. It usually will. And I personally feel buying a B grade crayfish with one claw, watching it grow back and watching them grow to their true potential really is one of the coolest things about keeping pets in general. Just kind of watching a crippled pet grow and become the mature adult is really valuable and really satisfying experience. So yeah, that's my basic crayfish buyer's guide. My voice is literally about to die. It's a lot of information in one video, pretty long video. If you guys prefer me do it in shorts, then just say it in the comments. I'm experimenting right now. So yeah, this is Crayfish Obsession, and I'll see you in the next one.